Innings, as today the Niners get their first win of the season on this NFL edition of Kruk and Kuip Extra Innings. And thank you, veterans. We salute you. You can. As today the Niners get their first win of the season. You can follow me at RobIvan at twitter.com. First, we'll start off with off-season news. The Giants hired their final part of Bochy's new coaching staff. And Rick Shue, the former hitting coach of the Washington Nationals, is going to be the assistant hitting coach for Alonzo Powell. Now that that's out of the way, now it's on to the offseason as they look to acquire talent. It's going to be difficult to try to acquire talent with a $15 million budget. And I'm totally not convinced that they're going to be able to get what they can through a trade and whatnot for what they want. And we shall see how the new approach goes this season. Now the eyes are on Bochy for next year. We shall see if Bochy and the Giants decide to part ways if things don't go any better next year. And they have made a decision to pick up Pablo Sandoval's option for another year. So he will be back with the Giants as of next year. We shall see how that works out. I expect them to still be upgrading at third base. I think the most viable option on the Giants' budget might be Todd Frazier. Frazier he won't hit for average, but he can get you still a home run or two, depending on how AT&T does. Or maybe you just go committee for the first part of the year. If that does not work out, maybe hope that Christian Arroyo has a good winter league coming up. And also this week concluded the Arizona Fall League. And it looks like the Peoria Javelinas won the Arizona Fall League this year. As that comes to a conclusion. And now it will be on to the Winter League coming up down in Latin America. It looks like Steven Dugar finishes with a respectable 279 average, so that could bode well for Steven Dugar as he looks to maybe compete for a roster spot next spring training. Aramis Garcia, that's a guy certainly who might be a guy to watch in AAA next year, depending on what they do with Trevor Brown and Tim Fedorovich. But I think we might see Aramis Garcia in AAA next year. He might be somebody to watch in Sacramento. Chris Shaw did not have that great of a fall league, so we'll see if he repeats AAA. DJ Snelton, he's certainly looking like he's going to compete for a roster spot. He did great. Tyler Beatty settled down after starting rocky in the fall league, but now we got Tyler Beatty, who I think certainly can Beatty now with the second year in Sacramento, can Beatty get that ceiling where it should be next year. And then you certainly have Andrew Suarez in Sacramento next year, so that's two arms you definitely have to watch in Sacramento. Yohan Gregorio, 6.75 ERA. He's likely going to start. We'll see if he can compete for that swingman spot in the bullpen next year for the Giants. But all is quiet thus far. More rumors about the Giants wanting to trade for Giancarlo Stanton. But I think that's starting to. Now the Giants are maybe interested in somebody off of the Red Sox, Jackie Bradley Jr. He'd be a defensive upgrade for the most part. But we shall see what happens with that as we get further towards the hot stove and stuff. Now with fall leagues wrapping up, next will be winter leagues. As they start having winter leagues down in the Dominican Republic and the Caribbean League. We got the Dominican Republic. We have Mexican Pacific League, Puerto Rican League, where we will likely see Christian Arroyo play for the next few months during the winter. And hopefully he does well there and maybe can carry some momentum going into the offseason. So we can carry some momentum going into the spring training. And this week in the hot stove and signings and stuff, and it looks like Boston is going to pursue Giancarlo Stanton too, so we'll see if that works out or not. Boston would not be too bad of a spot for Stanton. And it looks like the big ego known as Scott Boras is going to try to get a $200 million payday for JD Martinez, which I don't know. In this new age of the CBA, I really think a lot of teams are going to be shying away from making big contract signings of this caliber. So we shall see what happens with that. Dodgers extend club option on Logan Forsythe. Wellington Castillo is going to become a UFA. Zach Cozart's in free agency, and Greg Holland's a free agent as of this week. Got the Rule 5 draft. Maybe Giants might be rumored also to be involved in a trade, possibly trading Joe Panic to New York for Starlin Castro, and possibly a Rule 5 player as the Giants look to upgrade the farm. But it looks like for the most part it's all quiet. And it looks like Todd Frazier, who I think should be with the Giants, is wanting $33 million for 3 years. I don't think he's worth $11 million and that's where the Giants are going to maybe have to do this year is a bunch of 1-year contracts to kind of bridge the gap. Maybe the Giants try to give. I think honestly, $7 million might be a more realistic goal for the Giants. Can get Todd Frazier for $7 million. I think they sign him. He doesn't have the average, but he can still at least hit a couple home runs. Or maybe the Giants trade for prospects. He got Victor Robles, Kyle Tucker. Those are two outfielding prospects that could hit for power, maybe. We'll see. Or maybe the Jay Bruce is another option for the Giants, who might be on the cheap, as the Giants need to be on the bargain bin this year. And another coaching additions for other teams this week. John Malley will be the new hitting coach for the Phillies, and Dusty Wathan will be the bench coach for the Phillies this week. But for the most part, I expect that they need to be bargained in. They really might be best to tread water for next year and try to maybe aim more for 2019. Well, it's looking like Jay Bruce is another guy that's asking too much money, though. And Jay Bruce wants 80 to 90 million for 5 years. I don't think he's worth that much money. Problem is, I don't want anybody in the outfield who's on the wrong side of 30 at this point. But I think maybe we see a committee approach in spring training for center field. I think that would be an interesting option. Maybe you do just tread water with Austin Slater and Jarrett Parker. And that just might have to do. You might just have to make do with cereal for next year. All right, and then the Cubs hired Brandon Hyde as their new bench coach. So we'll see how he does on being next to Joe Madden next season. We got Carlos Gomez, John Jay, Jose Batista, Andre Ethier. Those are other options that could be on the cheap. And it looks like the A's might be in the market for Christian Yelich and Marcell Ozuna. That would be a good opportunity for the A's since they've got the farm to do it, and the A's could start increasing payroll since they need to get fans in the seats in Oakland. And it looks like Chip Hale is going to be the new bench coach for the Washington Nationals as of this year, after taking a year off from coaching. So we'll see how he does in DC. Dana Lavangi is the new pitching coach for the Boston Red Sox this year. We shall see how he handles Chris Sale next year and David Price, who's looking to reinvent himself. And then, of course, look for a rebound year from Rick Porcello, Drew Pomeranz, so we shall see how he does. Reds sign right-hander Kevin Quackenbush to spring training. Rays sign Vidal Nuno, who will be in the minors next year. And it looks like the Orioles might go in and trying to look to sign Andrew Kashner and Jason Vargas, which is not too bad of an idea. And certainly Kashner is going to be a good buy low option. He had a really good year last year in Texas. But the problem is Baltimore has always had bad luck with pitchers. But I think maybe being the back end for Vargas and Kashner would be really good for Bundy and Gausman, as Baltimore looks to upgrade the rotation to match the hitting in Baltimore next year. Especially if they start slow next year. It's like Ruby De La Rosa is going to return to the Diamondbacks next year on a minor league deal. And we also had tragic news out of Philadelphia. Unfortunately, Doc Holliday passed away in a plane crash flying over the Gulf of Mexico. He was only 40 years old. And Doc Holliday was a key part of the Phillies championship run of 2008 and of their reign of terror during the late 2000s in Philadelphia. And he was also a big part of the Blue Jays organization. And he's the only pitcher to ever pitch a no-hitter in the postseason against the Reds in 2010. So I expect his number to probably be retired in Philadelphia and Toronto next year. And it looks like Dale Sveum is going to become the new bench coach for the Royals, with Terry Bradshaw becoming the new hitting coach. Cal Eldred will run the pitching coach, will be the pitching coach next year. Dave Island was not retained by the Royals. As Kansas City gets ready to go into a rebuild year next year, likely be without Kane and Mustakis, and they might bring back Hosmer if anybody. Hopefully, it doesn't end up being as bad as it was with the Alex Gordon contract as of right now. Now on to today's game for the 49ers, as the 49ers picked up their first win against the awful New York Giants. So we shall see how that works out. And the Niners have really been hungry to get a win. At some point they were going to get a win. I thought last week would have been a good opportunity, but they finally got the win they deserve. They took advantage of a New York Giants team that has really quit on Ben McAdoo. And CJ Beathard was really good today, 19 for 25, 288 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Carlos Hyde, 98 rushing yards. Matt Breida, not too bad either, 9 carries for 55 yards. Marquise Goodwin, that was an excellent bomb he got from Beathard. That was a really good bomb in the second quarter. And that led to a Niners touchdown. First quarter was all field goals. Robbie Gould got a 43-yarder. And then Aldrick Rosas, 2 field goals in the first quarter. Then in the second quarter, that's where the Marquise Goodwin caught that beautiful bomb from C.J. Beathard for 83 yards. Then New York answered as Evan Ingram responded with a touchdown for the Giants, going back the other way as New York took back the lead. Then, for the most part after that, was all Niners all the time, as Garrett Selleck, another 47-yard bomb from Beathard, that was for another touchdown. Then Beathard came in the third quarter and ran it in himself for a touchdown. That was a really beautiful thing. And I kind of got worried after that play, since it looked like C.J. Beathard hurt his thumb after that play. And then Matt Breida, 33-yard run for a touchdown to ice it. And then in the fourth quarter, Roger Lewis got a garbage touchdown. And then the final score of 31-21. This was a really good outing for the Niners, as now they look to maybe this goes towards giving the franchise a boost. And really, I didn't want to see John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan wear an 0-16. I think if they had lost today, you might have started hearing rumbles about Kyle Shanahan being on the hot seat. Now that they got a win, now it's on to next year. They can really start. And they really don't need that first round draft pick either. There's going to be some they can get some good O-line in the middle, in the third round or so. Quentin Nelson would be a really good offensive guard for the Niners, as the Niners really need to beef up the offensive line in the offseason. I think we're fine at quarterback next year. You got C.J. Beathard, and of course you got Jimmy Garoppolo. I think we'll be seeing Jimmy Garoppolo start for the Niners after the bye week, so that'll be a good. I'm very curious to see how Jimmy Garoppolo does in his first start against the Sea Chickens, and we shall see. Hopefully we can steal one more win. That would be really good. But if they get the nice bye week, they go off with a win, and hopefully we see Solomon Thomas maybe start after the bye week too. We get more of the rookies in there. But I think really you can go into next year's draft targeting offensive line. You can trade down and get more offensive line, and maybe go get a wide receiver in free agency, and then build from there. At least get a few more wins next year. And whereas if you're New York, now you maybe start jumping into that second spot in the NFL draft. Maybe they're the team that gets Josh Rosen in the draft, and maybe they keep Eli Manning for another year, or they try to trade Manning and gather up on draft picks. And this team, the New York Giants, have just quit on Ben McAdoo. I would be very surprised if McAdoo has a job tomorrow. We will probably see Steve Spagnuolo take over as the interim head coach beginning tomorrow. And New York's fall from grace is really interesting. Do you maybe listen to Denver, a team that needs a quarterback, and try to capitalize on draft picks? Is Davis Webb the answer? These are questions that are going to really hinder the G-men as they go through the last 7 weeks of the season. And who fills the coaching vacancy? That could be a really good coaching vacancy for the right hire. Maybe they pick Frank Reich might be an interesting draft pick, an interesting coaching pick. He's done a really good job with the Eagles this year. He'd certainly be up for some head coaching positions. And certainly I think New York could go after two options. Might be Frank Reich or Josh McDaniels. Or third option might be Matt Patricia. I certainly think Matt Patricia would be a good fit over there in New York. It's a team that that really is caught in that purgatory situation, so we'll see what happens with that. Now let's do NFL wraparound for today. Here we go with the Week 10 wraparound. The Falcons beat the Cowshits without Ezekiel Elliott 27-7. And I think Dallas is really in trouble without Ezekiel Elliott, who's likely going to be suspended for the next 6 games. And, of course, you got all the drama between Jerry Jones and Roger Goodell going on. That could start becoming a huge distraction as they go down the stretch. But I think, can they win a game without Ezekiel? That is a tough question. Now with defenses starting to tackle Dak Prescott, and they failed a mediocre Atlanta team today, so it could easily be 5-9 by the time Ezekiel comes back and be out of the playoffs. And then the Saints, they're the real deal. They crushed the Buffalo Bills 47-10. And that Saints defense is stout this year. They are really starting to make a special run with maybe possibly Drew Brees' last year with the Saints. And maybe Buffalo, maybe they're not the playoff team we thought they were. And the question is, next week, do we see Tyrod Taylor, or do they maybe make a switch to Nathan Peterman? That's going to be a good question for Buffalo. And the Packers, they actually got a win without Aaron Rodgers this week, beating the Bears 23-16. And Brett Hundley did not look too bad today. They were able to run the football on the Bears. Fortunately, they lost 2 running backs to injury today. But now Chicago at 3-7. Maybe you see John Fox's seat start getting a little bit warmer. Who knows? The Lions destroy the only winless team left, the Browns, 38-24. How much longer will Hugh Jackson have a job? That's going to be a question. But really, that's going to be the toughest coaching vacancy to fill this offseason. Is going to be Cleveland's. As nobody wants. As nobody wants to deal with the nuclear waste over there in Cleveland. Jimmy Haslam's just has to keep cycling through coaches. But I don't even think at some point Hugh Jackson's not going to survive the season. But the problem is, I don't know if you want to see Greg Williams end up the interim head coach in Cleveland either. The Steelers beat the Colts 20-17. And Jacoby Brissett ended up in concussion protocol, so we could see Scott Tolzien starting next week for Indianapolis. And the Jaguars beat the Chargers 20-17. And Fitzpatrick got a little revenge on his former team as the Bucs beat the Jets 15-10. As the Jets laid an egg today. The Titans beat the Bengals 24-20. Vontaze Burfict was wrongfully ejected as a referee made contact with him, and it was the other way. I thought that would be a suspension when I first read about it, but no, I think that'll be an honest mistake. The Vikings stay red hot, beating the Redskins 38-30, and they're probably going to stick with chances are, I think they likely stick with Case Keenum at this point. And then the Rams beat the Texans 33-7. And the Sea Chickens beat the Cardinals 22-16. And now, if the season were to end today, up to the date standings. Patriots right now in first. Buffalo still in second. With half a game over Miami. Miami at 4-4. The Jets fall to 4-6. The Steelers 7-2. And then Cleveland 0-9 as the Steelers are going to clinch sooner. Might be the first team to clinch this year. Jacksonville and Tennessee 6-3. Houston 3-6. Indianapolis 3-7. Kansas City 6-3. Everybody else below 500 in the AFC West. Eagles 8-1. Dallas 5-4. Minnesota 7-2. Green Bay and Detroit both at 5-4. Chicago 3-6. Saints Panthers. AFC South could take 3 teams into the playoffs this year, depending on how things go. Or maybe Seattle 6-3, 7-2, depending on how LA Rams at 7-2. We'll see how Seattle handles life without Marshawn Lynch, not without Richard Sherman the next few weeks. And I will now call it a night, call it a week for NFL. I'll be back next week with more of an off-season, more of a baseball show next week since the Niners will be on a bye. So thanks for tuning in. Everybody, have a good night.